let's talk specifically about making your plan for your Parkinson's disease today. What we really want to do is find out how to individualize an activity program that's meaningful and reasonable for you to achieve on a daily basis. Because we know Parkinson's disease afflicts all of us a little bit differently with tremor or rigidity or imbalance. And we also learned today about some of the cognitive issues, etc. And we'll be addressing those today. And I want to make sure that each one of you walk out of the room today feeling like you're standing a little bit taller, much more knowledgeable about your condition with some weaponry that you can use to combat this condition. You'll see that we're going to be addressing strength, tremor, balance, posture, and then also rigidity. And you'll see specifically how we're going to address those things. We're going to find out exactly what the evidence tells us about how to address each one of those things and where you can go to get extra resources for them. So many of you are already very familiar with the fact that exercise is not only beneficial for individuals with Parkinson's disease, yourselves or the people that you're providing care for, but you also know that exercise helps to keep the level of medication that you're requiring maybe a little bit more effective, makes that medication more effective, and keeps those cells that are receiving that medication actually a little bit more viable, keeps them alive. And so it helps us not only at the level of the nervous system and not only at the level of the neurotransmitter, the chemical that communicates signals and messages between nerves, but then obviously we all know that exercise helps our body as well. So we've got so many different folds of benefits from exercise, a lot of which the research we're just now tapping into. So we're going to be looking at some of this today and understanding what the evidence has led us to understand at this point, and know that really with the work of the Davis-Phinney Foundation and with many others, we're still learning more every single day. And that's very exciting for me as a physical therapist to know that we're just tapping into what can be done for this. So we understand that, yes, these are some of the most common complaints that we see, some of the most common side effects we see of Parkinson's when we categorize them as weakness. And so you may be experiencing some of these, and we could categorize those things that you see in yourself or if others have pointed out to you. If you see them up here on the board, you see that those could be categorized as weakness. Throughout the morning so far, and in some of the exhibit halls, as well in some of the literature that you've already read, you've understood that moving big, moving loud, moving large helps us really enact a little bit more power in our bodies and helps to combat some of these weakness symptoms and phenomenon. So if you find yourself recognizing some of these symptoms that you have, or that others are telling you you have some of these symptoms, please look that direction toward that moving big, moving loud. That's going to help us out a lot. I'm going to also arm you with a couple of exercises that you can do to directly help your body and implement some of the moving big strategies. An effort to be able to apply exactly what the evidence says. You'll see in the picture here, this gentleman with Parkinson's disease is working on getting up from this chair. And we're going to individualize what you might be able to best learn from this message about how to challenge your strength. Now, we all bring to this moment in life different sets of abilities. And I'm going to try to help you take this act of strengthening, the action of sitting to standing and then coming back down again, and trying to make it individualized to what your capacities are. So, with pun intended, if you are so moved, please join me in actually trying out this exercise for yourself. If you were to sit down in a sturdy chair, aha, I've found you all already in a sturdy chair. Nice job, you got the first act right, okay? I want you to stand up and sit back down for 30 seconds straight on my command here, okay? And I want you to think about the fact that you can individualize this now to make it a little bit harder or easier for yourself. Those of you that need to use a walker, you've got the walker at your aid. Those of you that need the assistance of a caregiver, please stand by that individual. Those of you that feel like this is an easy task for you, try to do it without hands. In your home application, try to potentially do it from a lower chair, or even for a longer period of time. So you see, we can take the one simple activity and we can actually individualize it to what your capacities are. All right, so I'm going to stand before you here. There's no chair for me, but I'm going to go invisible chair just like the laughing yoga and take that invisible pill here today. And I'm going to do a sit to stand for 30 seconds straight while you, if you feel so moved, will join me here. All ready? On your mark. Get set. Go. Stand up, right back down as quickly as you are capable of doing it. I'll let you know when we're halfway done. However many you can achieve is your best. Okay, you're at halfway right now. Hang in there. 10 seconds to go. 2, 1, and you are done. Give yourselves a round of applause there. You've done something meaningful for yourselves there, but you've also done something measurable for yourself. Now, the measurement aspect is going to come to play a greater role at the very end of my efforts with you here today, but I want you to keep in mind this is one thing we've done that you could measure. You could count the number of repetitions you were able to achieve today. Just kind of keep that in mind. With regard to challenging strength, sitting to standing is not the only thing you can do. We certainly can work on yoga and other group exercise programs. I've already mentioned to you some of the efforts of big and loud, and to be able to create more power, generate more power, and consistently be able to access that power. You're going to help your legs, you're going to help your arms, no doubt about that. But in addition, when you're working on the loud exercises, you're helping facial muscles, trunk muscles, and helping your brain. So excellent opportunities to be able to help. One simple opportunity there that you can apply at home would be the sit to stand. Let's talk briefly about tremor. We understand that tremor afflicts some of you, but we know that medications to some extent are going to be able to help to reduce the tremor. How many of you would say that you actually experience more tremor, though, when you are concerned, fearful, or fatigued? Okay? And that's a great percentage of you here in the room today. Thank you for sharing that. I would tell you then, if you are a person that feels that your tremor increases when you're fatigued, and I'm talking to you about exercise, what kind of bridge can we make there? If I can help you become less easily fatigued, can I cause the tremor that you experience when you get fatigued to be harder to provoke? And the answer is absolutely yes. And so we look for ways to be able to improve an individual's endurance. Continuous types of exercise, whether that be cycling or walking aggressively, big walking, lifting light arm weights. Making it more difficult to fatigue you makes it more difficult for you to have tremor-provoked fatigue. Okay? And that is evidence-based, and that's something that may surprise you a little bit. We can't actually completely diminish tremor. We do what we can with surgeries, with medications, etc. But we understand the controllable part from a physical therapy standpoint that we can apply is actually making it harder to fatigue you, working on exercise that lasts for a long period of time on a regular basis. So you can recognize some of those symptoms that you may find in yourself. So when we train for endurance, we make you more tolerant for fatigue, and we understand that working on these things on a consistent basis, as I mentioned, doesn't make the tremor completely go away, it just makes it that much harder to provoke it. Now, there'll be a relationship when I told you some of you might experience tremor when you're fearful. There'll be a relationship here to working on balance exercises then. The more well-balanced you feel, the harder it is for you to feel fearful and unsteady, and therefore the more difficult it is to provoke that onset of tremor. You're less fearful, you're more confident, you're not going to go into tremor quite as rapidly or be as easily provoked because of also that experience. So that's why we go directly into balance. Now, balance is not a simple concept. And for me to be able to suggest that I can give you the best balance exercise for each one of the 500 to 600 of you here in the room would be false. But we can individualize it. We understand that balance can be subdefined, and you can glean information from what I'm telling you to make your own balance exercises as long as I give you enough information. Understand that balance really takes all 5 of these things that are listed for you. And when Mark talked earlier about the capacity for a person to be able to attend to different stimuli and to be distractible, but then also focus in on important things that are happening, like my balance rather than the plane going by, okay? And to be able to pay attention to salient and meaningful information about the sidewalk crack that's coming up in front of you. The ability to balance requires, just like I showed you down there, number 5, the ability to attend and pay attention and not be distracted off to other things that could borrow your attention from your movement. How many of you find that when you start to go through a doorway, your steps become shorter? Would it surprise you then to understand that's actually a non-motor sign that's influencing your motor capabilities? The distraction visually of the door is limiting your ability to move at your fullest capabilities. Visual distraction. You can train yourself to become more tolerant of visual distractions, of auditory distractions, of manual distractions. Now, manual distractions means things that I'm doing with my hands are distracting me from being able to pay attention to my posture. Now, I'm not going to suggest that all of you start pulling out iPhones and iPads and everything and start walking around to train yourself, walking, combining other distraction tasks, but there are very good ways to be able to build your ability to pay attention to your balance and start to borrow some of that attention away, okay? Imagine that the stronger you are, the more capable you are of creating a balance reaction and effectively catching yourself. So strength is a portion of balance. It's necessary. Power is directly related to that. Power is the ability to generate force quickly. And that's with the sit to stand, and you're trying to do it as rapidly as you can. Imagine that some of you may feel like you're constantly falling backwards. And what's a natural compensation for falling backwards? Lean yourself a little bit forward. And then after you feel that you've leaned yourself a little bit forward as a compensation, and you still feel like Parkinson's disease has caused you to feel like you're falling backwards, what do you do next? You lean forward a little bit farther. And we're just now coming to the point where we're understanding that some of the posture that's characteristic of some of you with Parkinson's disease is actually an ineffective compensation because you feel like you're imbalanced falling backwards. So balance training that causes a person to be at the edge of their heels makes them more comfortable with leaning back and less likely to compensate by leaning excessively forward. And there, the relationship to posture becomes. Top of the list, coordination, placement of feet. The ability to be agile, to put your feet exactly where you would like them. Understanding that that's another aspect of balance that we can work on. And working on some of the movement activities that we saw up here so far today, twisting and placing feet. They are very viable mechanisms by which you can improve your capacity to balance. Even just very simply working on your ability to be able to weight shift back and forth and then alternate the feet that you're using and accurately placing your feet right where you'd like them. In just a moment, I'm going to give you a couple of coordination and very challenging balance activities. And I invite those of you that feel capable and energized enough to join me, please do so. So let's take a look at some of these balance activities. In an effort to individualize a balance activity for yourself, I'm going to give you what's called the 4-stage balance test. And in the 4-stage balance test, we have an increasingly more difficult environment in which to balance. So let's look at stage 1. Stage 1, and please do join me up here if you feel that you're capable and energized to try each one of these 4 stages at your leisure and at your table. Stage 1 would be standing with your feet side by side. We call that nudge position or approximated position. So thank you. Those of you that feel moved to do so, please do stand and try to stand with your feet as close together as you can. This is all done with your eyes open. None of it requires equipment. Some of it, depending on your skill level, may require your walker or a caregiver, and please participate safely. So you would record how long you can stand in this position, and we like to see individuals be able to get to 30 seconds on this position if you're capable. Now, stage number 2 becomes a little bit more difficult. This is a staggered approach. One foot becomes slightly ahead of the other, but they stay together. Okay, so stage 2, as you see the picture up there, the instep of one foot touching the toes of the other foot. And then you want to record your time. Ideally, you can achieve more than 10 seconds with either foot as the forward foot for condition number 2. When we look at condition number 3, we're going to take that just a nudge farther, and we're going to actually bring your feet in a lined up fashion. A little secret to this one, if you have a foot or a leg that you feel is more involved, whichever you put as the back leg will be the dominant leg for this activity number 3. Okay? So you may want to start this with a less involved leg as your rearmost leg. This is very challenging, another step forward, but this is a way that you can apply and individualize balance efforts for yourself. So we call this tandem standing or tightrope standing, and I see a number of you making that small adjustment to catch yourself, and that's excellent. You want to know why that's excellent? Because if you practice something that's too easy for yourself, and you can just stand there for 40, 50 seconds, it's not therapeutic enough to do you rehabilitative good. Okay? So that's how you're going to individualize. You're going to do something that's just right within your capabilities and practice that on a regular basis. Then let's move to number 4. And this is even that much more challenging. And again, I want to caution everyone to be safe. But number 4, you only see one footprint there, right? So that's just standing on one leg to the best of your abilities. Okay? So an older adult who cannot hold the tandem stance, number 3, for at least 10 seconds is at risk for falling. But you can improve yourselves. I've been working as a physical therapist for 25 years. And I'll tell you that the world of Parkinson's disease rehabilitation has improved and expanded like none other. We used to think when I graduated from physical therapy school that Parkinson's disease was consistently a degenerating condition, that individuals once diagnosed, they would begin to get worse. I am here to tell you absolutely and irrefutably that is not correct. Individuals come to us on a regular basis as physical therapists throughout the nation, and they get better. And this is one way you do that. You measure yourself. Let's look at posture. We've alluded to posture so far, and we understand that posture starts as a problem of the brain, causes some of the rigidity, causes some of the negotiation of where our balance is. We think we need to be leaning forward to combat the leaning backwards. But then over time, posture becomes a more complicated situation because you begin to adopt the posture on such a regular basis that in addition, your musculature and your skeletal system and your joints become adapted to that posture. So it does start as a problem of the brain and then becomes a complicated problem of the body. So what you're going to see here are 2 different stretches that I'm doing with this gentleman. The first stretch can be easily replicated at home and actually would be best applied with the assistance of a caregiver. You'll see a little white foam roll that's between his chair and his back. I am pulling gently against his shoulder blades and the front of his arms as well to pull him back into that roll. You can easily create a long towel roll out of a bath towel at home, put it up and down your spine, and either with the assistance of a caregiver or a care provider, loved one, what have you, be able to be pulled back into a more erect posture. We know it starts as a problem of the brain, but we've got to address the musculature. Here's what we're doing. Okay? If you don't have a caregiver available, do your best to try to clasp your hands together around the backrest of that chair and bring yourself gently back with the towel roll behind you. If you're unable to clasp your hands together, then just reach back to the back edge of the seat and pull your arms down and back together. No stretch that causes pain is a beneficial stretch, okay? You just want to feel the sensation of a stretch. For many of us, we work so hard throughout the day to keep ourselves from falling further forward that the tension in some of the musculature of your low back becomes very burdensome. And to be able to stretch some of that musculature out that has experienced so many repetitions throughout the day, we tried this stretch number 2. Notice the one detail that's important here. It's not just that he's bending forward in a chair. He needs to actually pull his knees together. So we try to have individuals bend forward with your knees together. You should be able to, depending on other medical difficulties or conditions you've got. You wouldn't want to do this if you just recently had a hip replacement or a recent back surgery, for example. But you should be able to nearly reach the floor and keep your knees together. The very lowest portion of your back around your sacrum is actually what's being addressed at that point, but only because you've brought your knees together. So it's not just a low back stretch to really help to relieve some of those muscles that are overutilized. Now we're going to talk briefly about rigidity, and we've already talked some about it. And we mentioned that rigidity and tremor would go hand in hand in that both of them would be provoked by fatigue. And so what do you suppose I'm going to say here to you? Rigidity is definitely a problem of the brain. Rigidity is definitely a problem that secondarily afflicts muscles, joints, bones. But if it can be increased when I'm fearful, tense, increased when I'm fatigued, therefore I should be able to do some good about that when I am working on endurance activities, when I'm working to make myself less fatigable. So we understand, to begin to summarize our efforts today, we understand that your medication is going to be more effective when you engage in some of the activities we talked about. So make it more effective. Take the dosage that's prescribed, keep your brain tissue healthy, and make that dopamine that's viable in your system even more present and active and available because you've participated in exercise. 3 times a week, some applications that you can work with would be do your 30 second sit to stand and individualize the difficulty level for yourself. Weekly dosage for balance should be done. All 7 days of the week, balance should be addressed. And use the 4-stage step test to determine how much better you're getting and what's the level that you can challenge yourself to be safe and still very therapeutic. On a daily basis, you want to improve your flexibility. Measuring that. How close can I get my head back to the wall when I'm standing with my heels to the wall? That's called an occiput to wall test. That's another way to measure how your flexibility and your posture is doing. I will actually just take a moment to applaud all of you in your efforts to combat, to fight, to push forward, and to understand you're not done here. You've got the ability to improve from here. So thank all of you.